Hey everybody, this is Nick from Android Headlines. Today, I'm going to be bringing you the review for the OnePlus 2. Now the OnePlus 2, as you may have seen from our other videos, is OnePlus's second phone. Now of course, last year they had the OnePlus 1. That was the much praised phone, including by ourselves, and it's been my phone for the last year. I really enjoyed the OnePlus 1, and now the OnePlus 2 promises to be a 2016 flagship killer. That's sort of taking last year's little tagline and moving it up to next year as well. So they're claiming that this is not only better than this year's phones, but it's also better than next year's phones. Now without getting too much into the semantics, we're going to put that to the test today and see if OnePlus's claims are what they say they are. So the first thing we're going to look at is the price. Now last year OnePlus did two versions of the phone. They had an international version and a Chinese version. They also had two separate versions of each of those. That's a 64 gig and a 16 gig. This year, they're breaking it down between, again, 64 gig and 16 gig. Just like last year, you don't have a micro SD card slot on either of these phones, so whatever memory you buy them with is what you're going to get. What is different this year from last year is that the 64 gig version actually comes with 4 gigs of RAM. The 16 gig version only comes with 3 gigs of RAM. It's kind of an odd decision, but I suppose there's a reason behind it. The price difference between the two is about $50, so the 64 gig version is going to be $389. While the 16 gig version is $329. That being said, the actual hardware itself is exactly the same. So you're going to get the same processor, the same camera module, the same build quality, and the same screen. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that. It's got a fully metal build all the way around the edges. The metal itself stops just before the top of the screen, sort of like the design of last year's flagship, where the screen was raised above the rest of the body. Unlike last year's, there's no protruding bezels on the top and bottom of the phone, so it's even all the way around. The metal also has a nice little taper to the top of it. When holding the phone in the hand, it really just feels solid. It's got a really great weight. You can tell this is made with premium materials, and in general, the phone just feels really phenomenal. There's little things here like the pattern on the priority slider, as well as the smaller things you might not think about, like the vibration motor, which just feels really excellent and is not overpowered or too loud. The phone ships with sandstone black, which is the color that OnePlus shipped with last year. Unlike last year's phone, however, the back is easily removable, and you can replace it with a couple of different backs that OnePlus is selling for about $25 or so a piece. Again, just as we've said in previous videos, that's going to be rosewood, bamboo, black apricot, Kevlar, and of course the sandstone black that it ships with. The sandstone itself is a really nice feeling material. It's a little less rough than last year's, and in general it just feels a little more refined. When looking at the back, you'll note that the camera sensor seems like it's in a bit of a weird placement. It's moved down about an inch, and at first I thought this was kind of ugly, but after using the phone for a while, I quickly realized exactly why OnePlus moved this down the way they did. Last year on the OnePlus 1, the camera sensor was all the way at the top in the middle. When holding the phone, I often had my finger get put in the lens, creating problems obviously when you're taking pictures or video. As you're holding the phone, you'll note that your finger sits just where that little spot is that they've moved it down. This is a pretty ingenious design on OnePlus's behalf. I'm sure there could have been a different look to it, but overall I'm not dissatisfied with this. Along with the round camera lens that's a little bit larger than last year's, you'll also find a dual LED flash which is significantly brighter than the one on the OnePlus 1. And below it you're going to find a laser autofocus module that was made famous on the G3 last year. Moving to the bottom of the phone, you're going to find stereo speakers with a cutout that looks eerily similar to that of the iPhone 6 or the Galaxy S6. In between these stereo speakers, you'll find a brand new USB Type-C cable. USB Type-C is great because it not only increases transfer speed, but it's also completely reversible. The problem here is that you need to make sure you carry this cable or another USB Type-C cable along with you at all times, because if your battery gets low, those micro USB cables simply will not work here. And since the battery is non-removable, if you forget the cable, you're pretty much SOL. Looking at the sides of the phone, on the left side you have the priority slider, which is a brand new invention from OnePlus. This mimics the priority sound modes in Lollipop, which range from all notifications, priority notifications only, and alarms only. If you've ever used Lollipop, you'll know that these notification modes go hand in hand with the quiet hours. Well then, if you've ever used wow. If you've ever used Android Lollipop, you'll know exactly how these notification modes work. It's a rather ingenious idea that works really well, and I found myself using it all the time. However, curiously enough, OnePlus removed the scheduled quiet time feature that's built into Lollipop. On the right, of course, you have the volume rocker and the power button, and up top you're going to have a 3.5mm headset jack as well as a noise-canceling microphone. On the front of the phone is the beautiful 5.5-inch display. This features smaller bezels than last year's phone and as such is a little bit more narrow. This makes the phone feel better in the hand, and it's just narrow enough to where it really feels like a significantly smaller device. On the bottom of the front, you're going to find an odd-looking home button, which actually is not a button at all. Rather, it's a capacitive key that sits in between two other capacitive keys. This home button actually doubles as a fingerprint scanner and is one of the big selling points of the phone. If you don't care very much for hardware buttons, you can always change it to software buttons in the software. It's a simple slider and it works really easily. You can even keep the physical home button active if you want, and of course the fingerprint scanner always works regardless if you use hardware or software buttons. The 5.5-inch screen on the front is an LCD. It has great black levels in color, especially compared to some other LCDs on the market. It's not oversaturated. It is only 1080p, but it's super sharp, and honestly, I found myself never wanting more. Even looking up close, there's really no way you can see the pixels, and I think the only point where you're actually going to notice the difference between 1080p and Quad HD at this size and this quality of a panel is when you're using the phone for VR purposes, where the pixel density becomes rather obvious. Speaking of performance in VR, this phone is powered by the Snapdragon 810. Yes, that's the same famous Snapdragon 810 that you've probably heard a lot about overheating and other various sort of performance-related issues. Thankfully, I can say that the heat and the performance issues have not been found at all on the OnePlus 2. We have a little article for you that breaks down exactly what we did to test this. Basically, the temperatures never rose above 45 degrees Celsius or about 107 degrees Fahrenheit. Given that that's only a little bit warmer than the human body, you're probably not going to feel that this is any more than just a little bit warm, even during the longest of gaming or filming sessions. At the same time, performance didn't ever seem to drop, and running benchmarks was pretty consistent throughout this period, even when it was running at the hottest level. Behind that fully removable back cover, you're going to find a sealed battery, as well as the dual SIM tray slot. While this is a 300 mAh larger battery than the OnePlus One, the battery life in my testing was significantly worse than that phone, and I had a hard time getting through any full day, no matter how lightly I used the phone, without having to charge it at least once towards the end of the evening. This is definitely something that can be fixed in software and will likely be enhanced as Oxygen OS matures. Those who are actually looking to use this as a phone will find that this works perfectly on T-Mobile and AT&T in the US, including LTE speeds. Since this is an international phone, it has support for a wide variety of bands, which you can find listed in our written review. Moving into the software, this is powered by Android 5.1.1, and it runs OnePlus' own Oxygen OS 2.0. Now, Oxygen OS was created from the remains of the partnership between Cyanogen and OnePlus, and features developers from the teams at Paranoid Android and a number of others in the developer community. Over a series of just a few months, they've managed to craft something really special. The look and feel of it is very stock Android 5.1 with some extras here and there. In fact, there's almost parity with CyanogenMod in quite a few areas. The theme engine is pretty light compared to Cyanogen, but you can go ahead and check out our software overview video to see exactly what this OS is packing. One of the biggest annoyances that I found that's clearly a bug is that the fingerprint scanner works great most of the time. However, the home button is actually a little bit flaky every now and then. Sometimes the button wouldn't register my presses, and other times it wouldn't register any press at all, even on the lock screen where it's supposed to unlock the phone with your fingerprint. This didn't happen very often, but it was often enough to get annoying and to have to note on the review. Last year's OnePlus One outputs some incredible sound, and this year I was hoping for about the same thing. Thankfully, OnePlus did not skimp on the audio chipset, and in fact has not only included an audio chipset that seems just as good as the one found in the OnePlus One, but has even upgraded the equalizer software to include more functions as well as more customizability. It also ties into the OS a little better too. When listening to any music or watching videos, as you adjust the volume, you'll find 3 quick presets that you can change. In each of these presets is a number of other presets and customizable options. I found that once again, the OnePlus 2, like its predecessor, has some of the best audio output I've ever heard on a smartphone. It truly is a great benchmark for what I can expect for the rest of this year. Camera is always a big selling point when it comes to flagship models, and the OnePlus 2 is no exception. This year, OnePlus is eschewing Sony's own sensors for a new OmniVision sensor, one that's exclusive to the OnePlus 2 for the rest of the year, and is a 13 megapixel sensor that features 1.3 micron pixels. These are larger pixels than the 13 megapixel sensor found in last year's OnePlus One, and as such has better low light capabilities, as well as wider dynamic range. This results in really excellent photo quality with less noise, on top of having a denoise algorithm that works really well at cleaning up any noise in the picture, as well as keeping details sharp. The over-sharpening filter was a little much for my liking, but that can likely be toned down in the upcoming manual mode that OnePlus is promising. Speaking of unfinished software, the camera software is absolutely unfinished. There's some great groundwork laid here, but there's definitely a lot of work that needs to be done. There's plenty of bugs, lots of weird navigation issues with the UI, and just features missing in general. What was present though worked really well. Auto mode, clear image, and HDR all worked extremely well, were super fast, and didn't have very much processing time for the modes that require such a thing. Unlike last year's OnePlus One, out of the box HDR works really well and is really fast. In fact, I really had to try hard to create images that had double imaging or any of the other weird problems that HDR might have sometimes. Clear image is your friend when it comes to low light shots, and anytime there's even a little bit of low light, clear image brings out the detail like you wouldn't imagine. Those looking to use flash in low light may need to watch out. This flash is extremely bright, and in any subjects that were even relatively close, it would completely black out the background and only have the subjects in the foreground visible. While this may be desirable in some situations, you're certainly not going to want to use this all the time. Video quality is super nice with extra crispy 4K video that looks great on any size screen, as well as being held extra steady with that hardware optical image stabilization module that OnePlus included in the OnePlus 2. Check out our written review for pictures that you'll be able to compare with some other smartphones out there and see for yourself just how good the camera is on this phone. Overall, this is an absolutely phenomenal phone. Is it a 2016 flagship killer? I'm not going to say so, but it is definitely one of the best phones this year. So, if you're looking to pick up a OnePlus 2, good luck with the new invite system. Maybe OnePlus can get that tweaked a little better like they promised, but for now, it's still limited availability. I hope you enjoyed the video review. Check out all the features and everything else we have going for the OnePlus 2, and of course, until next time.